Just today we are going to talk a few slides about the modern system. If you remember yesterday, just reviewing a little bit, we talked about the history of classification. What are some things that we talked about yesterday? Okay, more or less some people. Who did we start off yesterday talking about? Aristotle, right? We started talking about Aristotle. And when we were dealing with Aristotle, what did we say? What did we say about Aristotle, folks? What did we say? How did he classify organisms? Brandon? You were either a plant or an animal. Really rather basic, right? Then we went on to a gentleman that we called the father of taxonomy, right? The father of a taxonomy. Who was that? Carl Linnaeus, right? And when Linnaeus was, his system dealt with different levels of organization. Different levels of organization. And what was the two-word term we gave with him? We said about Linnaeus? What? What is it? Binomial nomenclature. Good. Binomial nomenclature. Well, the modern system has been added to Linnaeus's system. We have added evolutionary relationships to Linnaeus's system. So, if you look, okay, you talked a little bit about this, read a little bit about this in the POGIL, didn't you? About the levels of classification. Okay? So, the levels of classification: domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. They are broken down into taxonomic categories. All right? I've included this diagram in your notes at the very bottom. Okay? The very bottom. Now, notice what isn't on this particular diagram. What isn't on there? Huh? The domain. Okay? The domain. When I was learning about this stuff, when I was in college, we didn't talk about domains. Okay? We talked about the kingdoms. That was the biggest level when I was learning this stuff. Okay? So now we have even put in a more broad, the most broad category, the domain. And if you notice, the domain would be up here, and then we have kingdom, phylum, class, order. Notice we're getting more and more specific, aren't we? Okay? Do you think the starfish and the grizzly bear are very closely related? Probably not. But you can see as we go down, we're more related here. We're more related here, right? Do you think that these two bears, the black bear and the grizzly bear, are pretty closely related? Probably. Okay? So this is going down talking about evolutionary relationships, much like when we were doing with the cladograms, right? Okay? Much like with the cladograms. Now, categories range from domain to species. They go from domain to species. The domain is the broadest, the most general, and has the largest number of organisms. Ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about domains later on, okay, we're going to be doing it next week sometime. when we talk about domains, we'll talk about 3 different domains. So everything can be classified into one of those 3 different domains. It is the largest, most broad of all the levels of taxonomy. Species is the bottom one. The species is the bottom one. It is the most specific. It has the fewest number of organisms. Most specific with the fewest number of organisms. Subcategories. Okay? We have subcategories. And we talked a little bit about this when we were dealing with the salamanders. Remember the salamanders at California? Okay? We talked about subspecies there. Okay? Remember that here were different types of subspecies. So here is the genus, here is the species. Notice all of these have the same genus and species. Genus and species. Here is the subspecies. All right? Now, thinking back to that lab on speciation and those salamanders that we talked about in California, what was something that was different between the subspecies? Could be the area that they were living in, right? What else? What else was different between them? Huh? Their looks, their markings. Okay? Some of them were black. Some of them were black with yellow spots. Some of them had orange spots. Some of them were orange. Right? Different types, different subspecies. Okay? There they are. There they are, the different ones. Where we're living at. They're more similar. They're closer together. Okay? Ooh, ooh. Farther apart. Different colorations. We use dichotomous keys to classify. We are going to talk about dichotomous keys tomorrow. Have you ever dealt with dichotomous keys? Have you ever used one? Okay, we'll deal with it tomorrow. But basically, it's dealing with either yes or no. Okay, we're going to create one tomorrow. Okay, but it's basically asking a question, yes or no. Look at this very first one. Does the animal have that dry skin? Yes, you go one way, no, you go another. Does the animal have hair? Yes, you go one way, no, you go another. All right? So this looks like our bracket method, doesn't it? This looks like our bracket method. So we're going to be dealing with dichotomous keys later on, probably tomorrow and Monday, Tuesday, maybe even Wednesday of next week we'll be dealing with dichotomous keys. Now let's look at our levels of classification. Let's look at our levels of classification. We talked about the most broadest one. Okay? And I'm just going to go through an example of all these. Includes all living things. The 3 different domains are eukarya, bacteria, and archaea. We'll go over this later, like I said. These critters that we have here, those are all eukaryotes. And we'll discuss why those are when we talk about the domains. The next one is the kingdom. Okay? The kingdom. They can be archaeobacteria, eubacteria, protista fungi, plantae, animalia. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different kingdoms. Well, of these critters, these are in the Animalia. They're all animals. Okay, the phylum divides the kingdom. Okay, so these are in the phylum Arthropod. Here's a class of crustaceans. The order. Notice how we're getting more and more specific though, right? The order. Now I have either a crabs or shrimp. The family, okay, breaks it down even more because it's saying now these are crabs or shrimps that have 10 legs. The genus is just crabs. The shrimps are out of there. And here's the species, a specific type. Okay? A specific type. And this species is a group of organisms that can mate and reproduce with one another. And each species have a unique name for every type of the organism. Okay? Now,